examination is going to show us the spacing in between letters and how they line up and lay over the top of each other to give us an indication whether or not the spacing between these two individuals are the same. So I transcribed all of Jack's communications and the Zodiac's communications in order to come up with similar words written by both authors to see if the spacing between them were relative to one another. I'm going to start here with the word description. It's one of the larger words that I found throughout. And here we have Q24, the word description written by the Zodiac. And when we take that and bring it down over the top of Jack's handwriting, what we find is that there's a nice space between the S and the C. The R lines up right on point. The I, the P, the T, if brought down a little bit there, actually starts at the same point that the I and or that the T in Jack's word description begins. And if you make a slight adjustment to the left and lay it down, you find that the I begins where the I begins for both authors. The O and the N both start at exactly the same point, indicating that the spacing between these letters are identical. To give you kind of a view of what it looks like when somebody is not the author, I've had 3 unrelated individuals to the Zodiac crime spree write the word description as well. And here we see one version of it where we go to lay it down and we get the DES to kind of match up there, but then we start to see everything kind of lose its point. It's completely spaced differently. The P doesn't even begin where the P begins in Jack's writing. The T does not begin. Even if I shift over, I cannot get the starting point of the N to match up with the starting point of the I or the O. So basically, we don't have a lineup here. It's not crisp and clear and clean like we see when we lay down description over the top of between Jack and the Zodiac. We can take the word sign from the Zodiac. Now, despite the slant in the actual D itself, if I lay this down over the top, you see that the I falls right on the I, the G is right directly in the same range as Jack's D, the N, the E, and then of course we've got that D that's a little bit slanted there, but taking note to the fact that there is almost a similar space relation between the E and the D in the word sign when just adjusted to the right there. Come back over and S-I-G-N-E is dead on. We can take the word off from the Zodiac, lay it over the top of Jack's off, and what we have is a perfect lineup. Space between the F's are right where I would expect them to be. The O is right within range and space of the F's, and that occurs with each and every single one of Jack's. The word express from the Zodiac, I can take and lay down over the top of Jack's expressed. Again, we have a perfect lineup. E-X-P-R-E, slight shift. We've got the S-S even spaced between each other. Bring it over here to this other express written by Jack, and the X-P-R-E-S-S lays down beautifully all the way across. Spacing is perfect. Start points are on, slants are there, form and shape within range. We also have the capital D-E-S, which was supposed to be December in the Zodiac communication, written incorrectly with an S, but if we lay that D on start point over the top of the D-E-S in the description from Jack Terrence, again, they fall directly on top of each other. Same type of thing is happening here with these particular words. As I bring them up, again, we've got Jack on the left, Zodiac on the right. But I can pick up many of the words throughout the communications from the Zodiac and have them line up beautifully. One of those develop another nice large word that we have right here. When I bring it down right over the top of develop from Jack Terrence, we again have the E, V, E, L, O, P, and E completely line up perfect. And the slant of the P, the slant of the L, everything is right on point. Taking the word oil from the Zodiac, I'm going to use that and even match it up with some cursive writing from Jack Terrence, because I find that space is still similar between cursive writing as it is through printing. So when I laid the oil down from the Zodiac, I found that we had a perfect lineup. The OIL fell right where we expect it to fall. Now, you can't get too excited about 3-letter words. Now, here's a printed oil from Jack, and you'll find even though it's got a capital O, everything sits down right where you would expect it to be. Can't get excited about 3-letter words because they're rather small, but the larger ones like developed and described and things like that. Here with sitting, we see that the ITT is pretty much on point with one another. Slight to the left, we've got an ING, or at least the IN matching up, so we do have similarities there. Between the in, if we take a look at in from the Zodiac and in from Jack, we'll find that the IN is spaced perfectly apart from one another, and the N starts right at the same level it does between each of them. Cannot, even though this one looks or appears to be written in mostly capital letters from the C to the N's in the middle by Jack, the cannot by the Zodiac falls down perfectly, again in place. Adjusted versus adjustable. If we line these up, we see that the adjust, ADJUST, are a lineup between the two of these authors. Mech, again, another perfect lineup. The M, even the points at the bottom of the M and the width of the M is identical. The E is perfect, the C falls right on line, and the H is spaced at the same degree, same amount as the Zodiac. In Jack's address sequences, it was very rare that he would use a comma. He generally did not use a comma between the city and the state, and a lot of times he would just purely spell out the first few letters of the state, as seen in Texas and Nebraska, California. When I did find that he used a comma, it was a straight angled comma, as we discussed in the actual individual clips of the commas. But that was very reminiscent and very similar to the Zodiac, where we found the city with no comma between the state, the first few letters spelled out of the state, and then we saw this nice big comma usage here, again slanted in the same direction that Jack Terrence slants his, so they both seem to address their envelopes or their addresses the same way. They both like to use unusual words inside of their writing, and we'll write them out. We have rigmarole, whatchamacallit, thingamabob, what's his name, well, never mind. Some southern references like fly a red flag. He's actually talking about Red, his mother's boyfriend, and he meant hanging. Here we have fed salt beef, fiddle fart around. These are southern terms. Jack is from Texas. They both have a habit of splicing their words, making them look like two, usually right at about a point where they're phonically spelling it out and they feel the break in saying it, and that break becomes apparent in their writing. So we get harass, meant, because. And we have Zodiac, we have the same thing, like wise, himself, myself, something, teen, agers. The next section down here is going to contain what I refer to as the ing reduction that occurs in Jack's writing. and in the zodiac's writing as well. And it's basically where the ing begins to decrease down, and the size of them become much smaller than the other letters that are written around them. And you can see that occurring in Jack's as well, where the E, the L, and the P look like a typical size in relation to the H, but then the ing gets very, very much smaller. Sometimes even curving downward is seen right here in the word seen, and we can see that occurring in speaking in several occasions in the zodiac's writing. North was another one of those words that we actually had a lineup on. When you set north from the zodiac down over the top of Jack, it lines up perfectly. Every letter is on point. They both use an unusual linguistics, which is putting themselves first in a sentence and writing it down. I and the other sergeants by Jack, and I and the police by the zodiac. Told you we'd get back to the lowercase l's, and this is where I chose to place this just so we can get an overall look at what's going on between these two people. They both slant their l's parallel in whatever direction they're going, but usually heading away from or the opposite direction of the letter that they're next to, almost looking like they're taking off and leaving. And the lineup on that, the slant on that, is identical as well. Some more spacing words. California, obviously they both prefer to spell California out using the first 5 letters. The amazing part about that is, again, we have a perfect spacing lineup. And that can pretty much be done with just about every single California for Jack. Lines up very nicely, right in range, exactly what a document examiner would expect to see. Asked, we have a relation where the AS is together, space between the S and the K, and then it looks as though the E and D are separate from the K as well. When laid down, the AS is on point with the K, slight movement to the left, the E and the D are where they should be. Another nice big word, not only is it laying down right on top of each other, but you notice that the break, because they both use that break in their words, that both the zodiac and Jack line up as far as the spacing of these letters are concerned, but also where they chose to break the particular word, the spacing between those are perfect. Xmas by the zodiac. I went ahead and used it. We're going to omit the last S because obviously Jack has spelt it correctly in his own writing. But we notice here that the X, M, A, S all sits down right in place with one another. The points of the bottom of the M's are even about the same distance or width between both of these authors. The word would. Not only do the slants of the letters match up perfectly, the spacing between them, absolutely beautiful. Here we've got the word police. Take a nice big word from the zodiac, police, lay it down over the top of police from Jack, and I'm sure you all are coming to the same conclusion that I am at this point every time I lay down a word.